Great, thank you. So thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to participate in the webinar. A little bit about Ultimate Canada. So we are the national sporting organization for Ultimate in Canada. We do not govern over any other disc sports. So if you know disc golf or guts or any of those sports, that we don't cover any of those disciplines. We really do only govern over Ultimate. We do have various programs that run. We've got a development program that focuses on our coaching and our LTAD. We also have a high performance section that takes care of all of our Team Canada athletes that participate in the international scene, both with our international governing body, which is WIFDF, and we also do have teams that go to World Games as well, which is fantastic. We're also very closely tied with all of our grassroots organizations, so we're working very closely both with our PSOs, but also with our city leagues within the country in order to continue to develop the sport and continue to grow. And one interesting fact for Ultimate is that we are a non-funded sport. So we are not funded by Sport Canada at all. We are 100% player or member funded. So all of our revenue is through events that we run and membership fees and grants that we are able to access. So it's kind of a different than many of the other sports that you probably are dealing with. So I do have a video here that I'm going to show, and we created this in 2015, and mostly it was we spent a lot of our time telling people what Ultimate is and debunking the myth that it is, people running around throwing a Frisbee to their dogs and things that people may have assumed Ultimate was maybe back in the 70s. So we created a video just to kind of try to reframe Ultimate, and I'll play that now just so that we're all in the same mindset as we start to talk about the events.
What's Ultimate Frisbee?
All right. Sorry, I had to do a little bit of audio changing in order to be able to show that. So let's get into some of Ultimate Canada's events. So we have two main flagship events that we run and that are used, one is used as a qualifier for international events as well. So our two major national championships. The first one is the Canadian Ultimate Championships that you see listed there on the left, which is CUC. And that is our summer club championships that happens through the summer. It is the largest event that we run. It's actually 3 legs that are broken into 2 locations. We have the junior divisions, which are all the U18 teams, and those are separated into open and women's teams. We have the adult single gender divisions, which are women's and opens, and then we have the adult mixed divisions. The way that it's separated into 2 locations is that for the junior and the adult single genders, they actually run back to back. So it's an 8-day event in one host city. It starts on a Sunday and it ends on the following Sunday, and has about 2,300 athletes that attend. The mixed divisions would then run when the single genders finish on the Sunday. The mixed divisions begin that following Thursday, and they are in at a different host city, and they run for 4 days. So they run from the Thursday until the Sunday, and that has about 700 athletes that attend. These national championships are used for qualifiers to international competition. Every year, it's a different international competition that it is a qualifier for. Every 2 years is the cycle that we work on for sort of the larger world events. So this year in 2019 is actually the qualifier for the with this World Championships, where each country is able to send one team to represent them in each of the divisions. So it's a quite highly contested national championships every 4 years. The offset 2 years is a club World Championships, where the top 3 clubs at your national championships get to go and play under their club names, but at a World Club Championships. So it's a little bit different. You send more athletes, but the qualification is a little bit different in that the top 3 teams get to go in each division. Whereas this year, it is only the top team that becomes Team Canada and gets to represent Canada on the world stage. The other event that we run is our University National Championships. We are not a youth sport event, so we run our own university championships. It's a 3-day event, about 1,000 athletes in attendance. It is broken into 2 divisions, so we have a Division 1 and a Division 2, with regional events that happen across the country in order for university teams to be able to try and obtain a bid to Division 1. And then any teams that do not get into Division 1, there's a maximum of 8 teams in the open and 8 teams in the women's that get to play Division 1. Every other team would end up being in Division 2. Both divisions happen at the same location, at the same host city over those 3 days. And it represents approximately 50 university teams that come out to play at our university championships. So a little bit about the economic activity. We have done a STEAM for adult single gender, and I was able to, that's the junior and the adults mixed together, and there was economic activity of about $2.6 million. The mixed division, I was desperately trying to find our STEAM assessment from 2018 that we did based on 2018. And I wasn't able to get a hold of our finance guys in time for the webinar, but we did do one. So if anybody is interested in that, you can always send me an email and I will happily get those figures from them and be able to send that on to you. And then we did do a STEAM for the University National Championships, which had about an economic activity of about $550,000 for the 3-day event. One of the things that's interesting is that our spectator numbers grow significantly depending on the market that we're in. So that's been something that's been a little bit of a challenge for us to be able to see consistently how many spectators we bring in for these, because if we are in a market that has a very strong ultimate community, those spectator numbers are huge. If we're in a newer market that is just starting out, those spectator numbers may not be quite as large as if we were in a market with a really strong ultimate community. So depending on where we are, those spectator numbers certainly change. There is always a base of people that will travel with the teams and that will travel to come and watch. And we do have, especially in the junior divisions, there's coaches and chaperones that come. We do have officials at both events, so those are all there, but those actual spectators that are coming to watch can fluctuate quite a bit. So one of the most important things when we're looking at where we are going to host our 2 flagship events is the venue. And we used to have a process where every single event that we had went out to bid, and we would collect the bids and then choose a location based on what bids we received. We started to run into a few problems in that we were receiving bids that didn't really match 100% the requirements that were important to us. So we needed to take a really good look at what was important to us and what were we willing to accept, where we were willing to sort of have, things not be exactly the way that we wanted them, and then reframe how it is that we allocated these events. So the biggest thing that we identified when we went through this process that we were not willing to negotiate on was the venue. It was the single most important thing. Everything else, we weren't worried. We know, Nova Scotia can throw a great party. We know that BC can throw a great party. We know that they all have wonderful hotels and they have lots of great volunteers and lots of wonderful hospitality. But if the venue wasn't there, that was a really big problem for us. So these are the venue requirements that we have for these events. For junior and adult, open and women, I put it in soccer fields there because most people, that's a better concept for them. 10 to 14 grass soccer fields in one location. And then in the brackets, I did put in there that translates into 20 to 28 ultimate fields. And that is what we need in order to run that event. For the mixed divisions, it's a little bit smaller, so we only need 5 to 8 grass soccer fields, which represents about 10 to 16 ultimate fields. And then for CUUC, which is the University Championships, We do need to have 2 turf soccer fields as well as 6 to 10 grass soccer fields all at the same location. Those 2 turf soccer fields would translate into 4 ultimate fields, and then the 6 to 10 grass fields would translate into 12 to 20 ultimate fields. And the reason that we need that for this is that many times in the past, because of the time of year, this is an October event that is held outside. So we are very susceptible to weather. And we have had to cancel this event in the past because we've been 100% on grass, which is why we now have the turf requirement. So Division 1 will always play on turf in order for them to know that the event will not be canceled on them. We may have to cancel or adjust schedules for Division 2 because they're playing on grass if we get really bad weather, but it gives us the guarantee that Division 1 is going to at least be able to play, and we will have a champion at that event. The reason for the sort of range for number of fields that we require is that you can have 14 grass soccer fields in one location, but depending on how your Parks and Recreation has actually designed the fields will determine whether or not we can actually put 2 ultimate fields onto those soccer fields. Typically, one soccer field can accommodate 2 ultimate fields, assuming that light posts haven't been placed too close, fixed garbage cans are not placed too close, because we do have to go over the sidelines of those soccer fields in order to be able to fit both ultimate fields. But if your park planners have made it so that the posts or benches or anything that can't be physically moved out of the way are too close to those soccer fields, we wouldn't be able to put 2 regulation size ultimate fields onto that field. So ideally, when we start looking at a venue, we need to see a map of where all of those things are and what the measurements are so that we can see exactly how many fields we would be able to fit on that 10 to 14 grass soccer field venue. So I put this here as just our event priorities, and I'll go back a little bit to how we used to have everything go out for bid. We've started to make a bit of a shift at Ultimate Canada in recognizing that our priority was venues and that was the single most important thing that we needed to have, and using CSTA actually as being one of the best ways for us to be able to start identifying venues that could host our championships. And then taking that information and either going out to specific cities that we know have the right venue and saying we would really like to host here, and so making a strategic selection as to where we are going to host, and then still incorporating some of our events as being ones that go out for bid. So each year it could change which event is actually going out for open bid versus which ones are going to be decided strategically. This year for 2020, so we award our bids the year before, so our 2020 bids were just due in 2 weeks ago. And so our mixed events were the ones that went out for bid, and we strategically chose the location for our large single gender event. For 2019, for this year, we had the large single gender event go out for bid, and we are internally, we strategically chose the location for mixed. So every year we take a look at which event we're going to put out for bid. There will always be one that goes out for bid, but which one can change from year to year. We have also traditionally had geographic rotation and taking a look at trying to make sure that we spread our events across the country and make them accessible to our players and to our members. And so those geographic requirements would be listed in the bid. If we were putting that out, it would be fairly obvious whether or not it was a match for you. Some of the other things that we found have been really important to us, especially when we're looking at those strategic partnerships that we want to make with host cities, is having an advocate in your city. The ones that we've had the most success with have been really an advocate for us because we're not physically there, but having that one person who is the voice that makes sure that we are heard and that our requirements are communicated and that we're connected with the people that we need to be connected to in order to make that event successful. So having somebody who is going to work with us, who's also going to advocate on our behalf, is a really important thing for us to be able to look at those strategic plans long-term as to sites that we want to use for our events for multiple years down the road. And then the other key there is having a partnership. I think that the most important thing when we are planning an event for us is that we bring to your city as much as your city brings to us. So it really is us trying to create something together. And the more that we can try to see how we can do that and how we can build off of that together, the more successful our events will be. We do have a profit sharing as well with our events in that it is 50-50 at the end. So we will leave 50% of the profits in your community for you to continue to build legacies. If we end up going, and we have sort of found a venue in the cities that don't necessarily have a huge ultimate league. So what we've done is we've used those proceeds, and we're starting to try and help those cities build ultimate within their community. So even if there's no ultimate league for us to be able to give that money to in order for them to create that legacy, that leave behind, we'll work with the city that, or the host city that we're working with, or the recreation department, and try and figure out ways that we can sort of bring ultimate and leave something behind that can continue to grow. For University Nationals, I will say that one event has moved 100% to a strategic decision, mostly because that requirement for turf is not met by very many locations. We have a very hard time identifying locations that actually have the requirements for the venue, and recognizing that because we are not youth sport and we are 100% athlete funded, we need to make sure that we host that event in a city that is accessible to 85% of the universities in Canada, which is the Ontario-Quebec 401 sort of corridor. So we know strategically that that's an important thing for us when we're looking at venues to host the University National Championships. It has been brought out of Ontario and Quebec in the past, but participation goes down significantly when these kids don't have somebody who's paying their flight and paying their hotel and paying their fees to be able to play. So I think that that's a bit of a ways down the road before it would ever leave the Ontario-Quebec corridor. But we are always looking for venues that could meet the requirements that we have for the University National Championships that we could consider for that event in the future. And I think that was all that I had. I don't know if people have questions for me.
Okay, we've got Teri-Lynne, we've got some questions. So obviously there's a lot of interest in the sport. The first question is about how would you describe the demographics of ultimate Frisbee players that are participating in your national championship? Certainly a lot of people at 2,300 people coming into a town for 4 to 5 days. How would you describe what's the age gaps and basically what can you say about the people that are coming into a particular city for a national championship?
So for the large national championship, the one that's open in women's, where it has both the junior and the adults, I think it's interesting to note our entry point for our sport has been continually changing, and I think that that's because we are so young. When I first started working in Ultimate, it was 2007, and entry point was considered university. That was where most people learned how to play Ultimate, was once they got to university. That has continually been getting younger and younger. Our junior national championships used to only be a 16-team mixed division. And we now, when we look at that event that has the junior and adult single genders, it is an even split between the number of junior teams coming and the number of adult teams coming. So the demographics, really, when you look at it, you have to look at those two events separately. So the first one being a lot of U18s, which means tons of parents, lots of kids playing, and then in our adults, they are very much so that university age for the adult age group, and then we do have masters divisions as well, which are the 33, 35 and up that participate. And then for mixed, you would be looking at the university age, sort of 20 to 30. They're saying now ultimate players, they're peaking in their late 20s, early 30s, so you're looking like 20 to 33, 34. And then masters division starting at 33 to 35, again, attending that mixed event also.
Right. Okay. There's also another question about international events. Is there international events for the sport that Canada can potentially bid on? And what role does Ultimate Canada play in those that bidding process?
There are bids, and if you go on to the WFDF site, which is WFDF, so the World Flying Disc Federation, they do put all of their events out for bid, so you can take a look what's available there. Their most important requirement is that you would have to have an Ultimate Association in your city that is willing to participate or partner with you in order to host. They won't just go to a city that doesn't have an Ultimate Association actively already there, because they know that they won't get the volunteers required in order to execute the event properly. So that's a requirement for them. Once you have, if you do have that and your Ultimate Association says, yes, we really want to host this, then you can come to Ultimate Canada and we can give you a letter for support if we believe that you are going to be able to host this event and do it in a way that we would be proud to put our name behind. So that's sort of how the WIFDF events generally go out for bid and the process that you would follow in order to be able to submit a bid from a Canadian city. Ultimate Canada is also looking at hosting an international event. We were looking at hoping to do it for 2020. We know that the clock is ticking in order to be able to do that, but we are looking at putting on sort of a Canada Cup idea for our World Games team. World Games is the highest level of Ultimate that is played at the moment. So trying to provide opportunities for that team to be able to play at the highest level possible in preparation for World Games. So it is something that is on our radar. How it goes out for bid and what the requirements would be, we're not 100% sure yet, but it is something that we are working towards.
Okay. Here's a question for both Blair and Teri-Lynne. Maybe Teri-Lynne, if you could go first, and then Blair. We asked Blair before a question about one of the examples of something that went really, really well. Maybe if you guys could describe something that didn't go well in a previous games, and a recommendation you would make for hosts in order to make sure that hosting your event or events goes really well.
Teri-Lynne going first? Or
yeah, Teri-Lynne, do you want to take a shot at that
first? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that we all have lots of examples of things that didn't go great, and most of the time I think in sport we tend to pull ourselves together and figure out a best way forward. Probably the one thing that I can think of off the top of my head was we landed in Surrey last summer, and that was one that had gone out for bid for our mixed divisions. And if everybody remembers all of the fires that were going on in BC last year, we did not have an adequate air quality policy plan because we'd never really needed one before. It wasn't something that we had ever dealt with, having really poor air quality for athletes during one of our events. And we kind of had to come up with something on the fly. I think we did an okay job at coming up with something, but it certainly isn't something that I would want to repeat. And I'd rather be much more prepared when we go in. And from a host city, I think one of the things that would have been really important to us, because I don't live in Surrey, so I didn't realize how bad the air quality was, and I wasn't getting that information from my local organizing committee for it to be on my radar that I needed to be addressing this before I actually landed in Vancouver and witnessed for myself how challenging it was going to be for these athletes to be running around outside and playing. So that communication, I think, is probably the most important thing, and that advocate in your city is almost that. It sort of falls in line with that you know what's happening, and we need to be informed so that we can make sure that we have all of the plans ready that we need to make sure that the event is executed well.
So that local champion is absolutely crucial, Teri-Lynne.
Yes.
Okay, so over to you, Blair.
I would probably say, and this is probably more so for people that are hosting multi-sport events, but when you have a number of sports that are taking place in the same event, one of the challenges that you always have, particularly if the events or if the sport competitions are of a great distance, and we sometimes get that more in our winter games because of ski hills, but it's really making sure and ensuring that all of our athletes have the equal playing field. And that could be anywhere from having the same type of meals at a satellite site that they would have at the athletes' village, to some athletes having to travel 2 hours to get to their competition. So it's really ensuring that every athlete has an equal playing field in terms of their nutrition, their rest, and their meals. And so it's all about the whole care and comfort of our athletes. And so in the past, sometimes that's been a challenge for us, but we certainly take that into consideration when we're deciding where our games are going to go.
Okay, I have one question here for Teri-Lynne. This question is, Does Ultimate Canada have a minimum expectation around a profit split? For example, if it's a break-even budget with reasonable contingency, would this be given less consideration?
We don't have a minimum. We have an ideal, but if it falls below that and everything else about the venue and about the city and about the, what they're proposing is in line with our priorities and with what we want to do, then it's not going to overshadow all of that. And our ideal is not huge by any means, and certainly the majority of the time, I can't even think of a CSE that hasn't far surpassed that ideal number that we have. But it certainly wouldn't be the be all end all if everything else was in line for what we were looking for.
Okay, we've got one more question, and Teri-Lynne, I think it's coming from the Quebec side. It's asking about another set of events that I think you've probably maybe forgot about because it's more of an off-season activity that's really started to catch fire. But the indoor series, what can you tell bidders about that, and is there any way for destinations to get involved with that?
So that, yes, the indoor series, which is 4-on-4 that's set up on an indoor soccer field, is fairly new. It's a format that was actually created in Quebec and has grown quite quickly across certainly Quebec and Ontario, and now has really moved into the Atlantic provinces. It isn't played so much out west, so anything sort of west of Manitoba is not really playing 4-on-4 as much, and which is why the event doesn't really go out for bid, because it again needs to stay in that Ontario-Quebec accessibility to where people are mostly playing. So it's another one that we strategically choose the location based on accessibility for participants, as well as one that is able to host the event. It's a 2-day event. It's over a Saturday and Sunday. There's 24 teams that do come. We do have 7 provinces that do play and do send a team, so it's the 3 out in the west that are just not playing. They get to play outside all year long. They don't understand our frustrations of having to live through winter.
Yes.
So it is an event that happens in early April. We have hosted it in Montreal, in Ottawa, and we are looking at some Toronto locations, but the majority of our teams do come sort of from Manitoba all the way over to the East Coast. So we do have PEI in that event, and Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. Those are all playing 4-on-4. But it would be something that if you have a venue and it's something that you're interested in, you can email me and we can have a chat about your location and see if it's something that would be a good fit.
Okay. Finally, the final question is I wanted to give both Blair and Teri-Lynne a chance to sort of have a final message for potential bidders for their upcoming events. So Blair, is there any sort of key points that you want to reiterate before we go off the call here, just as for those that are going to be looking to put in a bid before August 19th? And I repeat again, the Summer Games 2022 deadline is August 19th of this year. So what would be the final thoughts that you want to share with them, Blair?
I would say that, for us, even though it is a multi-sport set of games, it's far more than sport for us. It's the cultural and social side of our event as well, and that's a big component which draws a lot of media attention and a lot of attention, as I said, from family and friends that traditionally just a sporting event doesn't capture.
Right. Okay, perfect. And Teri-Lynne, turning it over to you, what's the final pitch that you want to make to these destinations? And also, what would be the best way, because it's a unique sport, growing in popularity, you've got a huge group of people that are going to these national events. The demographic is perfect for any community. What would be the best way for people to move forward and get the attention of Ultimate Canada to be considered as a potential host?
Important thing, and when I have the opportunity to talk to destinations, is when you're looking at the development in your city of sports fields, and there are, we are noticing a lot more of these multi-sport complexes popping up, is to really plan with thinking not just about, okay, well, this is going to be a soccer field and this is going to be a rugby field, but think about what other potential sports could be using those fields, and make sure that you plan in order to be able to accommodate them. So it could be as easy as making sure that your posts are all removable, so that rugby field can easily turn into something else, that that you're not putting, you know, it always boggles my mind how close a fixed garbage can would be to a sideline of a soccer field, which makes it completely unusable for us. So if you have the opportunity to talk to those recreation departments when they're planning those multi-sport complexes, to make sure that you're thinking not just about the soccer field you're putting in, but what else it could potentially be used for, I think it would open up so many more doors for sports like us to be able to come and be in your city and bring our events to your city.
Excellent. Okay, I want to take this time to thank our speakers. Thank you to Blair and Special Olympics Canada, Teri-Lynne and Ultimate Canada for jumping on the call today and talking about their events and their organizations. Very inspiring stuff, very great organizations. And I also want to, as a wrap-up, I want to thank everyone for their participation. You're going to, I want to make a note that we have a couple of additional webinars that are going to take place before the end of June. There's one on esports and there's another important one on social legacy. So I strongly encourage you to take part in those webinars or to encourage other people as well to take part in them. If you have any ideas about future topics for the fall or that you'd like to attend or participate in, or you'd like to pursue sponsorship for these webinars, please feel free to contact me. So without further ado, I want to say thank you to our speakers, thank you to our participants. I will be sending a copy of the presentation and a recording of the webinar as well for you to share with your organization. So thank you so much and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.